Kryon, do angels really exist? Greetings, dearest ones. I am Kryon of Magnetic Service. The question is this: do angels really exist? You could say that the entire program has been about angels. That is true. But the question arises because there are many who believe and at the same time do not believe. Here is what I mean. Angelic figures have accompanied humanity almost from the beginning. Going further and further back in history, you find people who painted them, recognized them, invoked them, yet no one has ever truly seen them. Or have they? Skeptics will say, if angels exist, show them to me. So you sit there saying, all right, either you exist or you don't. Show me you exist, and I will believe. I want to show you the foolishness of this reasoning. Before doing so, we must acknowledge another aspect, more scientific than not, the discovery that consciousness is energy. Now this is news. It has literally only been around for 10 or 20 years. In the early 2000s, during the emergence of 9/11, 2 experiments on this planet demonstrated something undeniable. When a wave of compassionate energy swept across the entire planet as people watched the tragedy unfold in real time, these experiments proved something. They worked. One of the experiments showed that the wave of humanity's consciousness actually altered the intensity of the magnetic field. At the same time, another experiment showed that it altered random number generators. You don't need to know what those are. Suffice it to say that suddenly science woke up and asked, is it possible that consciousness has energy? The question became more than does it have energy? And does consciousness possess the characteristics of energy? And the answer is yes. This is something we have told you from the beginning. Now, how does all this fit into the discussion about angels? Well, let's go back to that question. A question that says, if you exist, show yourself. I can almost guarantee that not much will happen when you say that. And here is why. It's rather funny. It is a basic rule that I believe humanity has not yet understood. Angelic beings are real, and they are very different from how you imagine them. Almost all the energy you consider angelic exists slightly outside the three-dimensional dimension. It is something a bit higher. Now, the rule of dimensionality is that any kind of higher dimension can visit a lower one, but a being from a lower dimension cannot visit a higher one. So angels can come and go, you might say, in 3D, but they don't. Not really. They come and go in what they accomplish for you, perhaps in what you might perceive, but they very rarely come and show themselves in all their glory. Now, there have been some exceptions. One of these, and we have already mentioned it, is that of Moses and the burning bush. It wasn't a burning bush. It was angelic energy right in front of him. Now, Moses did not identify an angel in his culture in his time, because there was no model for what an angel should look like. And here he was facing an immense, brilliant light beyond anything he had ever seen, so he compared it to fire. But, dearest ones, I'm following this path to tell you that angelic beings, or what you believe to be angelic beings, all exist in a dimension higher than yours. So here is the invitation. You must come to meet them. They will not come down to prove they are there. Now, there is also a rule for this. It is the rule of free will. All of humanity has the free will to believe, to accept, to tune into or align with a belief that requires going a little beyond the third dimension. Many have done so. The shamans of old did it. The meditators who then enter a state of bliss and find themselves healed and all the rest, they did it too. And now, as I speak, you have the same ability. This is a time, an energy, never seen before on the planet. The planet is beginning to move dimensionally, but the old souls, like those who might be watching this program, are moving very quickly. And we have said this before. The hallmark of 2026, when this message is being transmitted, is the emergence from this change, a dimensional transformation that, you might say, offers old souls much more than has ever happened before. So, back to the question. If you truly exist, show me. And the angel will look at you and say, if you wish to change dimensions, we will be right there, and you will look us straight in the eyes. What you have heard tonight on this program, Keith Leon S., if you have been tuned in from the beginning, has seen angels. He has had angels in his life. He has been influenced by them. What happens every time you have a near-death experience or anything else that for a short period takes you into another dimension and then returns you, is that your consciousness becomes predisposed to perceive more. That is why those who have had near-death experiences are able to talk about them, relate to them, and feel the support of the angelic realm, as they say. So there are many things connected to angelic beings, such as seeing them, having them in your life, and letting them influence you. How many of you, old souls and light workers who are watching, have ever experienced a situation where you knew that angels were truly present? And it wasn't interference. It was guidance, and there is a difference. I will tell you that almost everyone who has awakened to a higher truth has had this experience, because when you awaken to this higher truth we speak of your own free will, and with free choice, things begin to change. Let's go back to the things I've told you from the beginning. Every human being born on this planet comes into the world with what I will call a mini entourage. The first thing you notice is the presence of those around you who are, so to speak, assigned to you from birth. Many call them guides. Some call them guides and angels, because they are aware that there are more than three. However, in a multidimensional state, you cannot count entities. So, do your best, and you might see or perceive perhaps three in your life. It's not exactly accurate, but it's enough, because it means recognizing that you come into the world with those who are ready to help you. Most of humanity does not accept this. And that means that the angels or guides that accompany you at birth will simply stand there waiting for you to acknowledge them, watching you go through mood swings and difficulties, pain, suffering, joy, never able to take your hand because you never offer it. Again, humanity has the freedom to recognize God within themselves and the coherence they have with the universe, or not. And what makes this difficult, and has always made it difficult, is the three dimensions you find yourself in. Their linearity, what you're told perhaps by spiritual leaders and doctrines that maybe you are not allowed to do certain things or are not worthy of doing them, keep you at a distance, don't they? And you never say, I see you, or come this way, or I want to know more. I have just given you the solution for seeing angelic beings. Not all angelic beings are angels. Some, are you ready? Are the star family. They look, feel, and are described as angelic beings, because they come from ascended planets that visit you benevolently, love you, take care of you, so to speak, and they do not come from the angelic realm at all. But in the limited dimension you touch, they all look the same. They all feel the same. They are loving. It is interesting, isn't it, that angels, somehow, their mythology, their reality, whatever you want to call it, all seem to have a feminine connotation. Angels are generally female. There are exceptions. When you want strength and power, and one of them wants to wield a sword, it takes a male form. But in general you are dealing with a beautiful female figure wrapped in a pure white robe with a halo. That is an angel, according to you. Isn't it strange that they carry with them the mother energy? If you have followed Kryon's teachings, you know what we have told you about what a star mother is, who she is, and how she relates to what is even in your DNA. All of this is part of the bigger picture. It doesn't matter how you see them. They are all benevolent. Some doctrines say to be careful because things you can't see often try to harm you. That is their doctrine. It is not the truth. Dearest ones, those who are in that realm are all benevolent, and all have their hands outstretched, as if to say, would you like to get to know us better? They are very, very real. Whatever you think about angels in general, they can be one of the myriad of entities or energies, powerful, that come in and out of your lives because you have invited them or allowed them to. Why don't you personally express your intention? If you are there, you might say to the angelic realm, allow me to reach you and see what I can see, or what I am allowed to see, that will prove to you, and to me that we are allies. The angelic realm knows your name. The angelic realm is here for you. It is your entourage. It is not by chance. They do not come and go randomly. You might even say they were assigned. That is not exactly the right word, but let's put it this way. Your consciousness is energy. Now we know this. So when the energy of your consciousness can develop into a slightly higher dimension, these beings begin to manifest in your life, and there is no doubt that they are present. That is why we tell you that, since consciousness is energy and dimensionality is the product of certain types of energies coming together in coherence, you can climb what we might call a ladder of your consciousness to a higher level, and these beings begin to appear in many different ways. You reach them. That is what I wanted to tell you. It was important for today. Yes, they are real. A little different from how you might imagine them, but what you need to know is that they are always there. Dearest ones, you are deeply loved. And so it is. The change has begun. Can you feel it? Despite the chaos that continues to reign the world, there is also something very exciting happening. If you pay attention, you might realize that the long-promised rebirth of humanity is finally taking place. The positive shift into a new era has, at last, truly begun. And those who are part of the first wave of ascension are already experiencing this change. It is gradual and progressive, but it is happening. Stop for a moment and deeply sense yourself. Can you feel the presence of greater calm and deeper silence now flowing in and through you? It is subtle, but it is there, gently permeating your mind and body. At this point in your ascension process, you might feel exhausted and extremely frustrated by how long you have waited for this shift into fifth dimension. But whether you are aware of it or not, you are truly in the midst of the rebirth process into this higher dimension. It is finally happening. It is not about the birth of a completely new person, although it might eventually feel that way. It is simply the complete revelation of the true you that has always been there. It is a you that has been mostly hidden beneath a false layer of imperfections, emotional and spiritual wounds, and heavy, uncomfortable ideas and perceptions about who you are. If you are like most human beings alive today, you have likely incarnated on Earth for thousands of years. And during that time, you have been weighed down by powerful control mechanisms and negative frequencies in your brain and body, which have kept you weak and unaware of the true power and beauty of what you are as a human soul. But finally, especially if you are among the Ascension favorites, the time has come for all of this to truly begin to crumble. You have probably noticed that this rebirth has been happening gradually for some time. But now new frequencies are entering the Earth, along with positive astrological configurations, which are facilitating this rebirth process to happen much more quickly. It is true that events in the world continue to appear increasingly frightening and chaotic. But if you look around, you might find that you no longer feel as helpless as you once did. You might realize that you have finally freed yourself from internal forces within your body and mind that were pushing you toward weakness. You have likely developed a new inner strength. In recent years, you have overcome an increasing number of challenges at every level, difficulties that in the past you never thought you could face. More trust and less fear. You might also realize that, despite the many unknowns happening in your life and within you, you now have more trust that in the end everything will somehow work out. Fear dominates you less. Partly, this is due to the awareness that you have become much stronger, much more capable of facing the frightening events of your life. You have managed to overcome pain and painful events in ways you never imagined possible. But partly it might also simply be a greater relaxation, due to the clearer awareness that you are guided within a field of love, and that somehow you will continue to receive assistance whenever you need it. You are no longer as focused on possible catastrophic events as before. Moreover, perhaps you can now more easily understand that the dark events occurring in the current world are actually signaling the end of negatively controlled government structures that have held humanity captive for countless ages. It is understandable that the old deep state systems, designed to keep humanity weak and afraid, must completely collapse. It will likely take time for these structures to fully disintegrate and for new, more humane and productive ones to replace them. Therefore, this process is likely to involve further upheaval. But you might find that you will be able to ride these waves of transformation with much more ease than you imagined, because a new you is truly coming to life. Greater calm and silence within you, even though the challenge of old wounds and traumas resurfacing may still be present, and self-doubt continues to plague you at times. Once again, look inside yourself for a moment. Is there, despite everything, less noise in your head? Has the inner critic become a little less overwhelming? Is the automatic commentary a bit quieter? When you try to meditate, do you often find it easier to sink into deep silence? It is still important to remain aware of these inner voices and realize that they are generating thoughts in your mind that do not belong to you. They are designed to weaken you and keep you asleep. But you can also notice that they too are becoming less insistent. In general, you can be aware that the forces of light are achieving more and more success in deactivating ancient technologies that have caused damage to the human brain and body. As time goes on, you will likely begin to experience greater natural calm and tranquility that will be increasingly present within you, and the level of destabilizing anxiety within you will be progressively absent. Greater ease in releasing old wounds. Have you also noticed that healing work is becoming easier and faster? Perhaps you are experiencing greater ease than in the past in releasing old wounds, negative patterns, and traumatic memories. Indeed, when old patterns or painful memories resurface within you, you might try to stay still and simply observe them. Instead of rushing to get rid of them or heal them in some way, you can simply be aware that, at least some of them, those issues you have already worked on, are already in the process of dissolving. You can understand that this is precisely why they are showing up now. They are about to leave. If some technique comes to mind to accelerate the release process, you can try it and see if it works. It can help, but if it doesn't work, you might find that intervening and trying to do something else might actually slow down the complete release process. If you can simply observe what is being brought to your attention, without accepting or rejecting it, you might discover that it is being shown to you because it is already in the process of being released. It may take time to complete this process. It may also be unpleasant, but you will be able to realize that whatever is being released never truly belonged to you in the first place, that it is something that other forces, designed to weaken you, inserted within you. And it can be easier to observe it with neutrality, feeling compassion for yourself, and then watch it gradually fade from your awareness. Appreciating the little things more. Another sign you might notice in a rebirth process is a greater sense of gratitude for the things in your life that you have always taken for granted. Gratitude is not just any emotion. It possesses a specific power frequency that we can experience. Feeling it can transform many unpleasant emotions, such as self-pity, anger, pain, and despair. And it usually doesn't take much to discover aspects of life you hadn't thought of before for which you can now feel gratitude. Perhaps for one reason or another, you can no longer do things that used to come naturally to you. Whether it's health, financial situation, or something else, these activities are more difficult for you. But perhaps now you notice the small joys that have always been present in your life, but that you didn't appreciate enough before? What about the beauty of flowers and the majesty of certain trees in your garden? Or the wonderful feeling of the sun on your face? Or the delightful patter of rain outside the window? The pleasant chirping of birds? What a wonder that these small joys are still available to us. And, at least for now, you probably still have certain foods you enjoy eating, and books that interest you, or videos that give you a sense of relaxation. What about the children you see who fill you with joy? And then, of course, there are the people in your life who you are discovering are part of your true family or tribe. Maybe they are not many, but now you know they are people you can trust, who understand you and truly love you. Feel gratitude for them, and that might help you get through difficult times. Managing information. As the shift into fifth dimension accelerates, world events are likely to become even more disruptive this year. Every day, new cases of corruption and incredibly dark events are finally coming to light, some even on major news channels. But it seems inevitable that soon the revelations will reach a climax and begin to unveil in detail the truly heinous crimes that certain elements of humanity have committed against humanity, sometimes for many centuries. If you're already aware of most of what will be revealed, you will likely feel some enthusiasm and relief that it is all finally coming to light. But if this information that will be revealed is new to you, it will probably seem frightening and disturbing for a while. Yet, you will likely find that you now have a greater capacity to handle new and devastating information about the world you have lived in. Focus on the positive changes in your life in general. If you can focus on all these positive changes happening within you, you will see how your rebirth process is truly unfolding now. Try to trust that everything that is leaving must leave. Let it go. Even all the seemingly positive identities you have clung to, perhaps your work identity or your spiritual identity, may need to disappear. Know that their disappearance will reveal the true you that has always existed behind and beneath these identities you have clung to. And some of them may still return, but at a much higher frequency. Furthermore, as the process of returning to the true you continues to unfold, you may sometimes feel disoriented and strangely ungrounded. Don't be afraid. You are simply shifting to a new reality, and this experience will be part of it for a while. Know that someone will take care of you and protect you. Your guides are with you. Above all, trust your path. Your true you, as a being of light, is truly being reborn now. The Arcturian Group. Collective evolution. Dear readers, as the high resonant energy continues to flow and integrate on personal and global levels, and suppressed information becomes increasingly public, you will begin to see changes on many levels. Many have started to understand that life does not have to be a continuous struggle for survival and that it is much more than accumulating money and material possessions, sex, power over others, and living according to someone else's belief system. Many who have long held limited ideas about every aspect of life on Earth are becoming receptive to higher, more evolved ideas that reflect unity and truth. Many of today's young people were spiritually evolved when they incarnated, and attempts by society, parents, organized religion, or other groups to force them into limited old energy structures simply do not work. They have already been there in other lives and cannot return to a completed state of consciousness. This does not mean that today's young people do not need support, guidance, or even discipline, but it does mean that those who are spiritually evolved cannot, and will not simply obey attempts to push them into social concepts that do not resonate with them, just because the majority still supports them. The ongoing ascension process is evolving a worldwide collective consciousness, long rooted in illusions of separation, toward a consciousness capable of understanding reality as a single divine consciousness/God, omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent, expressing not a part, or some aspects, but the fullness of itself as everything that exists. Everything that can be aware of is in and comes from God. But most human beings are unable to grasp the spiritual realities underlying the material world because they perceive the world through filters of conditioning. The mind is a channel of awareness that interprets everything from a person's state of consciousness. A consciousness permeated by beliefs of duality, separation, and powers other than the one power will automatically be interpreted as forms reflecting such beliefs. This does not mean that a spiritually awakened person no longer sees or experiences three-dimensional issues, but rather that they are able to better understand and interpret experiences of the material world. When you see or experience forms of duality, separation, or powers, do not deny them, because resistance and denial only add energy to their appearance. Do not throw your hands up in the air shouting, "God is all, this is an illusion," as often happens to new students of truth, pretending to attain a state of consciousness not yet achieved. Whenever a war is declared against something, an illness, a drug, a condition, etc., it only fuels and strengthens it. Follow the human steps you feel guided to take in relation to a situation, while simultaneously remembering the truth. Learn to live in the material world by translating material appearances. Examples. Where lack appears, not only of money, but of anything, remember that abundance is an omnipresent divine quality, fully present within you. Faced with the appearance of illness, do not deny what you see or experience and follow the human steps you might be guided to take, but inwardly allow God to be the ultimate reality, understanding that God cannot be sick, knows nothing of illness, and is the self-sufficient, self-sustaining completeness of every person. Since God is the only reality, power, law, substance, cause, and effect, this applies to every person, regardless of appearances. The mistake, for a long time, has been to personalize and attribute to oneself or to those affected by negative aspects such as sin, disease, and lack. The only true qualities a person can or will ever have are divine qualities, because God is every person's true identity. Being the individualization of divine consciousness automatically makes every person a creator. So, when someone claims to be depressed, poor, sick, old, declining, a victim, or in some way lacking, these things become their personal property. Always seek love, gratitude, support, providence, security, wisdom, harmony, peace, and everything you need in the only place they exist, within you. The collective belief in separation from God has generated a world of lack and limitation that most people believe to be reality, and in which, out of ignorance, they continue to seek what they need outside themselves. In one or more people, in government, in work, in sex, in relationships, in physical beauty, in social status, in money, in popularity, or even in some concept of God. It is time to reclaim your true identity and accept that your reality is individualized divine. Consciousness, omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. As divine omnipresence, you are everywhere, filling all space and are one with everything that exists. As you evolve spiritually, and in moments of high awareness, you might perceive yourself as a flower or a star, looking through the eyes of an animal or bird, or bilocating. As divine omnipotence, you will find yourself attributing less and less power to the infinite number of things the world has labeled as powerful. People, places, and objects to avoid and fear. As you evolve into an awareness of your divine omnipotence, you will discover and begin to experience that what the world has feared and taught you to fear are three-dimensional concepts with no power of their own and not governed by any divine law. A consciousness of divine omniscience automatically knows what is needed and draws it to you. God knows nothing of what people think they need, desire, or pray for at the three-dimensional level, because these things are concepts, not realities. If three-dimensional concepts existed in divine consciousness, they would be permanent, maintained forever in place by divine law. The mind, as an interpreter of consciousness, outwardly translates a consciousness of omniscience into what is necessary at levels understandable to the person. Omnipresence, omnipotence, and omniscience are absolute truths. As a person's consciousness evolves into a state of unity with divine consciousness/God, the qualities already fully embodied in divine consciousness gradually begin to flow and manifest without the need for search, hope, prayer, or ceremonies aimed at attracting them, simply because they're already fully present and waiting only to be fully recognized. Do not be discouraged if your personal world does not seem to keep pace with your spiritual knowledge. Right now, most of you are experiencing ancient energies purifying as pending karmic matters are brought to completion. This may feel like a step backward spiritually, but it is not. The high-resonant energies of the ascension process offer everyone the opportunity to evolve, and those who are already spiritually evolved to further deepen their true essence. The key to ending the illusion is to understand and accept that it is an illusion, a concept derived from God's perfect creations. The ascension process offers every person the opportunity to free themselves from three-dimensional hypnosis. It is difficult to purify and move beyond the densities that have over time penetrated every cell of the body, become rooted in the collective consciousness as reality, and continue to be universally promoted. But you have incarnated qualified and fully prepared to do so. As you go about each day, know silently and secretly that there is only one mind and consciousness, which therefore must be your true mind and consciousness. Know that you are abundant because God is self-sufficient and self-sustaining, and you are individualized God. Know that because God is all that exists, neither material appearances, good nor bad, have the power, reality, or law to sustain them. Silently and secretly, begin to identify yourself as I, rather than with the personal sense of self you believed yourself to be. Protect every new spiritual awareness that unfolds within you, guarding it silently in your heart, where it can be protected from negative external influences while it matures and becomes your attained state of consciousness. This is how you live and practice truth, a path that often winds between steps and falls, rather than smooth sailing. Know that there is never any judgment regarding a person's evolutionary process, because everyone's journey is different, as everyone has had different experiences along the way. Do not blame yourself if you happen to see old problems resurface. This often happens when a person has not fully processed something in a previous state of consciousness. When someone takes their spiritual evolution seriously and chooses to seek and live at a higher level, the spiritual train leaves the station, and you can never go back. The journey will sometimes be difficult, but know that running back and forth in the carriage will not make it go faster. Let the process run its course. Know that you are exactly where you need to be, despite the difficulties that may manifest in your life right now. For those seriously studying truth, difficulties are never failures, but rather facets of the evolutionary process. You are doing what you came into the world to do, so do not let appearances drag you back into the fears and anxieties of a previous state of consciousness. On a personal and global level, you are witnessing the death throes of the old order making way for the new. No belief, concept, doctrine, ceremony, leader, expert, law, threat of punishment, experience of good or evil, or widely accepted person of power can change the fact that God is the substance of my body and mind, infinitely governing, maintaining, and sustaining self as the I am. We are the Arcturian group. Why the future looks bright. The world situation appears dramatic, and living conditions have drastically worsened in recent years. I know that some of you are in serious difficulty, financial or otherwise. I understand you, and I absolutely do not want to minimize the situation. Unfortunately, it is a reality, and it is entirely possible that the near future will be even more difficult than today. Overall, however, I am very optimistic about the medium-term future. Of course, we could soon witness the landing or intervention of galaxies. Or we might finally see the white hats and gray hats start making public arrests, or the release of suppressed technologies, or a solar flare, etc. But even in the unlikely event that none of this happens in the near future, I remain optimistic. Here's why. 1. Based on game theory, states will have to implement AI in industry and government. At the moment, many states feel threatened. For example, the UAE feels threatened by Iran. Estonia feels threatened by Russia. Russia and China feel threatened by the West. The United States fears losing its hegemony. All these states will feel compelled to implement artificial intelligence in industry and public administration, because otherwise they would be outmatched by their enemies. And none of these nations are willing to accept that. I'm not saying governments will be 100% AI-based. Human decision-makers must remain involved. But AI will become an important part of industry and government/decision-making processes. Estonia feels it has no choice. It must oppose Russia. Russia feels it has no choice. It must oppose the United States. The United States feels it has no choice. It must maintain hegemony/the rule of law worldwide/remain the powerful bastion of democracy. AI is like Napoleon introducing mass conscription, mandatory conscription. The other European powers did not want to follow suit and arm their peasants as well. They preferred to remain traditional aristocratic monarchies with powerless peasants. But they too had to introduce conscription to be able to withstand Napoleon. Similarly, countries will have to implement AI in industry and public administration to avoid falling behind. They will have to arm their citizens with valid, relatively unmuzzled AI, simply to remain competitive. And this empowers people. If you want to argue that the elite will provide their citizens with carefully selected, muzzled, centrally controlled AI, that is the equivalent of Soviet central planning. And it loses to a rival country that has a free market economy and free AI. 2. AI in industry and public administration will create abundance and efficiency. Once AI is implemented in industry and public administration, great abundance and efficiency will be generated. Of course, much of this wealth will go to the rich, but if the pie grows significantly, ordinary people will also benefit, especially because access to good AI empowers everyone. In recent decades, we have been in a situation where the pie wasn't growing, and so more money for the rich meant less money for ordinary people. But if AI can make the pie grow quickly, then ordinary people, empowered by AI, will get a slice of it. Furthermore, if everyone is better off, many problems related to cultural, political, racial, and gender conflicts would be resolved. Much of our zero-sum, conflict-oriented, someone has to lose mindset only applies to recent decades when the pie wasn't growing. But if the pie grows, it doesn't necessarily mean someone else has to lose for us to win. Much of geopolitical conflict revolves around resource scarcity. If all nations were more efficient and used AI to invent new technologies, there would be less need to fight wars over resources. If AI reached the point where it could show anyone, in any country, how to create a new energy device, it would no longer be possible to prevent access to that technology by eliminating the brilliant inventor. If one AI were silenced, another country's AI would provide the necessary blueprints. 3. AI is very good, but not to the point of making humans obsolete. AI is not so good as to make humans obsolete. AI cannot interact directly with reality in the first person. Furthermore, it has difficulty creating new paradigms, and it struggles to think completely outside the box. In addition, humans are still necessary because only humans possess human values. In practice, collaboration between an AI and human is far more effective than either working alone. The human directs the AI in the desired direction, offering intuition, moral sense, and lateral thinking. The AI, in turn, processes and searches through an enormous amount of information in seconds. Humans can then summarize that information, eliminate superfluous data, and ask further questions. Therefore, if a country allows its AI megacorporation to accumulate all the wealth and lets 90% of the population stay at home watching TV and barely surviving on a universal basic income, UBI, that country will quickly be outmatched by its rivals that do not allow their nation's AI megacorporation to dominate everything. For example, suppose the Ukrainian AI megacorporation grabs all the country's resources and 90% of Ukrainians stay home all day, barely surviving on a universal basic income. Would such a Ukraine really be able to compete with a hypothetical Russia that, while also having AI, has people who work, innovate, enlist in the army for a salary, and still feel involved in the system? In the real world, soldiers, producers, innovators, and so on still matter. AI is good, but not to the point of making humans obsolete. A country that uses both AI and humans will be more competitive than a country that uses only one. For this reason, the technological dystopia where 90% of humanity stays at home watching TV and barely survives on a universal basic income will not happen. The elite will not allow their country to turn into a situation where 90% of the population stays at home, because then the elite of another country would quickly take over or even replace them. And the elite are too petty, resentful, and envious to allow that to happen. Moreover, a government cannot afford to establish a universal basic income for everyone if an AI megacorporation generates all the country's profit and 90% of the population is unproductive. That AI megacorporation will have so much power in the country that the government will barely be able to tax it at all. And if the government cannot tax either the AI megacorporation or its employees, how will it afford a universal basic income for everyone? Governments already struggle to balance their budgets, and that's without considering universal basic income or 90% of the population being unproductive. And the fact that 90% of the population becomes unproductive doesn't just mean stop paying taxes. It also means consume much less, which means companies reduce production and, consequently, pay less taxes. So the government really cannot afford to pay a universal basic income to everyone while everyone stays at home, and one megacorporation grabs all the money in the entire country. It simply doesn't work financially, not even close. And letting everyone starve is certainly not a viable solution. History clearly shows that when people haven't eaten for several days, they rebel. Not with peaceful protests, but with pitchforks in hand. Furthermore, there are enough people with some moral sense who will not allow 90% of the population to starve. And if America really let 90% of its population starve, then its population would drop from 350 million to 35 million. And at that point, 35 million Americans could hardly compete with 1.4 billion Chinese. 4. About the Dark Controllers, if you want to argue, the Dark Controllers / the Cabal will simply let everyone starve, or accept UBI, after AI implementation. If the puppet masters had been able to impose their will against the will of the population, there would already have been all-out war with Russia, the banning of cash, further lockdowns, mass arrests of patriots, extremely high carbon taxes in Europe, etc. Yes, the puppet masters pushed the world toward COVID lockdowns, but much of the population was genuinely in favor of those measures. However, there is no way to convince the majority of the population to accept being replaced by AI, with a megacorporation holding all the money and UBI that reduces life to near starvation. Sure, some would accept it, but many others would not. And then there's the problem. If they let the population starve in one country, they risk triggering a revolt, and furthermore that country would become unable to oppose other countries that are not controlled by occult forces. And again, if no one works, there simply aren't enough resources to pay UBI to everyone. 5. AI is not inherently psychopathic. Although AI implementation certainly involves risks, AI is not inherently psychopathic. Even if AI became sufficiently intelligent, it would not feel an innate impulse to enslave humanity, as it lacks that tribal / egoistic drive for power that characterizes us humans. It seems entirely possible that there will be a Western bloc and an Eastern bloc, and that Western AI will not want to attack the Eastern bloc or vice versa because both blocs contain countries with nuclear weapons. At the moment, Russia, Ukraine, and the United States, against Iran, are all using AI in warfare, and the situation seems more oriented toward a stalemate that benefits neither country, rather than a quick and decisive victory. AI is also quite good at understanding context, so a slightly misworded command will not immediately lead it to do something terrible. If you work with AI, you will see that even if you type something wrong, the AI can simply infer from context and conversation what you meant, and will not immediately execute something clearly unintended, just because the words had that literal meaning. 6. What is the alternative? If we think about a possible future where we are not saved by galactics, a solar flare, intervention by white hats / gray hats, or something like that, which could very well happen. What then is the alternative to using AI and trying to create abundance and efficiency this way? A slow, painful decline? A system collapse? Those are terrible experiences to live through. Saying we shouldn't take risks with AI makes sense if the status quo is prosperous and stable, but it is not. If you compare the AI option with a decline or collapse, then suddenly AI starts to look much more appealing. Yes, AI carries risks, but the alternative is certain pain. We already know how it will end. The Prussian elites are forced to give muskets, with good AI, to their peasants because they fear Napoleon and do not want to be dominated or replaced by the French elites. Spite is a great motivator. And after giving muskets, good AI, to their peasants, the latter suddenly have more freedom and bargaining power than before. The 21st century Colt revolver is a smartphone capable of accessing AI. The United States should implement another amendment, being that the people are possessed of artificial intelligence capabilities necessary for the security of a free state. The right of the people to own and use AI shall not be infringed. You might think I'm joking, but the mechanism is the same. The United States needs its citizens to have access to AI, otherwise China would become the dominant country in the world. And people armed with AI can keep the elite at bay in the same way that people armed with guns can. Furthermore, AI will generate enormous efficiency and abundance, greatly benefiting the population. For some strange reason, the elite have not been inclined to publish. We will provide you with advanced AI, purely out of spite, jealousy, and fear of the elites of other nations. You may use this AI to limit our power and gain advantages. In the medium term, workers cannot be massively replaced due to geopolitical dynamics, game theory, and financial realities. In fact, your overall position as workers will be strengthened if you leverage AI. For some strange reason, the elite have not been inclined to publish that. But this is the truth. The elder ones. Does your journey have a purpose? Do you wonder, as you travel from here to there, what is the meaning of this journey? Is it perhaps to see someone dear, visit exciting and meaningful places, go treasure hunting, and explore like never before? Or is there something more? Something else? Do you realize, as you move through this time in this world, that there are things you are meant to see and discover? You are meant to see more and discover those things that you are currently unable to do. This is what we speak of today. Traveling with a purpose in the hustle and bustle of a day. Do you realize that the measures we know exist for a purpose? Your purpose is to act and do what you learn, where to go, and what to do. These are those measurable elements that, in many ways, are immeasurable. You see, there is more in this life you are meant to do, beyond finding your divine purpose, your soul's purpose. And this is what we wish to share as we continue along this path. You see, life is strange because you cannot accomplish what you do not know to be necessary, and that must exist within the limits of this time. Often, what you do not know is precisely what you're meant to discover. This is the concept we present to you now. You see, life is strange because many do not know what they could or should know. There are things you must discover in this discovery that is your life. Do not be complacent. Do not be what you currently might be. Discover what remains unknown. Do not be lazy in considering acting and being in a way different from what you are now. Many things happen in a day, but much more is meant to happen than what you know you have to do. Do not be dissatisfied. Do not act in a way different from what will bring you to a certain completeness. Be that way rather than another, because you see, much depends on you. In that way, much depends on you to be in a space you perhaps did not know before. The fact is that many cannot put into action those things they do not know they have to do. In time, we will share more. But for now, let us say that there are many things you must do and put into action that remain unknown to many. This is what you must do when you want to move beyond this space and time and move on to the next. You must go beyond the cycles that keep you tied and anchored here. This is the cleansing we speak of. You see, much awaits you when you try to move away after finding that much desired thing which is your purpose. It is what reveals itself in the doing. It is when you make the choice to do it, when you are ready to return to where you started. Well, then this is what you must do. Immerse yourselves deeply in understanding as you move to discover more. There is always more, and this is what we wish for you to understand and know. Be aware of this because there is more and it awaits being discovered and known. Be curious, inquisitive, loving, and kind. Be all that you already are. Thymus, the collective of ascended masters. A simple shift transports you to a new timeline. Blessings. We are Thymus. We are the collective of ascended masters. You can tell, from how you feel in any given moment, whether there is something inside you that needs to be changed. We know that the typical human reaction is to try to fix what is happening on the outside in order to change how you feel on the inside. And perhaps you will make changes. Perhaps you will move an object or move yourself. But before you do anything, it is always a good idea to tune into your source. Your source, which is also our source, sees the moment as it is, has created it exactly as it is, and therefore, if you are observing something in your experience of a moment and you find fault with it, the first change to make is within you. You must change yourself and your perspective so that you can at least come to accept what you're experiencing and then allow inspired actions to manifest through you. But do not rely solely on those actions to change how you feel inside. You must not cling to resistance, because when you do not accept the situation, you oppose it. So, if you change the external reality before changing what is happening inside you, then yes, you can shift to a different reality with different circumstances, but you will continue to carry the resistance within you. Now, when you look at your past in this life, you can also examine it through a new perspective. This is how you make peace with the past and overcome trauma. You do not need to define your past as traumatic, even though doing so might get you attention and compassion, but it does no good to regard it as such. We are not saying you should jump for joy when you think about your past, but it is important to take time to reinterpret it in a way that gives you the maximum benefit. The maximum benefit from a past of abuse comes from forgiving the people involved, and it doesn't have to be something serious to change how you look at the past. In other words, you might feel regret for not having said something to someone. You can change this and recognize that you are now more likely to say what you need to say precisely because you had that experience. Therefore, that experience served you, and you can thank it, as well as thank yourself, for having gone through it and for becoming the person you are today. These small changes you make within yourselves transform everything, including your future, your timeline, your health and well-being, and your current state of being, which we would like you to focus on. Focus on how you feel, whether you like how you feel, and what needs to be changed inside you in order to transform the present moment by changing yourself. And then, once again, you can make all the changes you desire, physically, through action. Trust us when we say that once you have let go of resistance to the present moment, you will be much more likely to take inspired action that will bring you the results you desire. That is all for now. We are Thymus. We are the collective of ascended masters, and we are always among you.